Second question. What happened? What kind of events took place when Noah came back off the ark? We'll talk a little more about Noah's flood in another question, but things like, well, we had an ice age. How did that ice age happen? Well, creationists have spent some time doing some real research. I mean, we have some really good scientists working with us now. And Michael Ord works for the National Weather Service, and he did a study on the conditions after the flood and wrote this little pamphlet, technical pamphlet called An Ice Age Caused by Noah's Flood. And let me just kind of rehearse for you, just for a moment, just the general findings he has here. Okay? We believe in the flood process. Part of the process was the opening of the fountains of the great deep. That is, subterranean water came out of the earth in very large quantities, probably 1/3 to 1/2 what's in the oceans now. That water would have been warm because it came up from the areas where the magma is in the earth. So we have an ocean that becomes very warm after the flood, much warmer than it had been before. And we have continents that are cold. We have the collapse of the vapor canopy, so the earth is no longer in a greenhouse effect. It has the climatology it has today, and the polar ice caps will begin to form. As a result of the warm oceans giving off all this moisture constantly, and the movement across the continents during the winter, you're going to have accumulations of snow that's not going to melt the next summer. And you're going to have over 100, 200 years, the accumulation of what's called an ice age. Okay? Now, that's based upon warm oceans, based upon the flood model. When the evolutionists are confronted with the ice ages, and the geological evidence for ice ages is clear. No geologist would doubt that, okay? The scale lands in the state of Washington, the excavation of the Great Lakes. There's all kinds of areas in the world where it's very clear there was an ice age, and the ice age was very significant. The evolutionists, however, are confronted with a problem. There's no way they can get the oceans warm enough to cause an ice age like we can with the flood model. So they have always, you'll read about the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth ice age. We believe it's one ice age with a series of advances and retreats based upon some climatological changes. But they have to do a number of ice ages because the ocean can't get warm enough. So there's some substantiation of the ice age through the flood. Now, when Noah came off the ark, of course, he had the animals with him, 2 by 2, and 7 of the kind of the clean animals. And the animals began to reproduce and spread and reproduce and spread. Now, there was some return of vegetation. Some vegetation would have come back reasonably quickly, but, you know, crops don't grow that fast. So the vegetation was relatively scarce. The animals came off the ark and began to reproduce and spread and begin to go out as they did. Now, as they spread, of course, the ice age is starting to take place, all right? That 1 to 200, probably 2 to 250 years of ice age is taking place. When that happens, the ice comes up on the continents and sits on the top of the continents, and the ocean basins go down. There's shorelines on most of the continental shelves between 100 and 200 feet below where the shorelines are today. If we take the ocean down between 100 and 200 feet, what we find is animals can walk without having to swim from Ararat across the Indonesian bridge to Australia and across the Aleutian bridge to North and South America. So animals could walk and reproduce and spread throughout all of the land masses of the world except islands like Hawaii. They could get to all those land masses by simply walking and running and just traveling in different directions. So the animals could populate the lands. But then how do we get different ecosystems? I mean, evolutionists tell us the reason we got kangaroos in Australia is because that's where they evolved. Well, I would submit to you it's not selective evolution, it's selective survival. The kangaroos came off the ark and reproduced and spread all over the earth. When they did in most places, they got eaten by the carnivorous mammals. But in Australia, there's no creature that's a natural enemy of the kangaroo. So the kangaroo would selectively survive. So the creation model says selective survival rather than selective evolution. The same result, of course, is unique ecosystems all over the world. And of course, the other thing that happens during that ice age is a lot of creatures will go extinct. A whole myriad of that wonderful bio that was there before the fall, before the flood, is gone. Look at Ararat today. You see it's a mountain, a snow-covered mountain, and the people that live there call it actually Noah's Mountain, the Persian legend. So there's indications that not only do we have the biblical record that in fact is where the ark went, but there's a lot of folk records within the same area that talk about the ark. Now, if you look at the location in Ararat, here, Turkey, interesting thing about that location, that Ararat is on a plain. The plain is about at about 5,000 to 6,000 feet above sea level, the plain at the base of the mountain, and then the mountain goes up from there. Okay? It's interesting, on this particular plain, there are a series of water bodies, the Caspian Sea, Lake Urmia, and Lake Van, that are salt water bodies at 5,000 to 6,000 feet. Indicating that, in fact, this was probably raised rapidly right after the flood was beginning to subside, and this was raised up as one of the first land masses that came up and actually trapped some of that salt water that would later wind up only in the oceans. The last event post-flood that we'll just spend a moment on here is the Tower of Babel. In addition to the animals dispersing, the people are also dispersed, but they're dispersed finally by God directly when he confuses their languages.